Hello, this is Professor Brown Cedarberg, and today we're going to be talking about parentheses, precedence, and associativity, and also about integer division. You'll see that I have an outline of a class here. It is the class DemoParenthesesPreedenceIntDiv. We also have the outline of our main method. You'll note that I have some comments here, and this line harkens back to as we learned our math. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. It relates to the laws of parentheses and precedence in that we have parentheses, exponentiation, multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction are of descending strength as we process in mathematical calculations. So of greatest strength are my parentheses, then my exponentiation, my multiplication, my division, my addition, and my subtraction. Now, I've also listed here in a comment a mathematical calculation that provides for the conversion of a value in degrees Fahrenheit to the corresponding value in the degrees Celsius scale. And we'll see that we take the value of the degrees on the Fahrenheit scale, subtract 32 from it, multiply that value by 5, and then divide the resulting value by 9. So let's see if we can build this formula out. First, we'll declare a couple of ints, and let's have one that will be the degrees in Fahrenheit, and another the degrees in Celsius. Now you'll know that I could have declared both of those on one line, but I'll do it on two just to make it clearer. Well, I know that negative 40 on the Fahrenheit scale is equal to negative 40 on the Celsius scale. So I am going to hard code in as my value for my degrees Fahrenheit, negative 40. And I know as I go, if I build out this calculation correctly, my degrees Celsius will be the same, negative 40. So let's build out that calculation. And we know that our first step is within these parentheses. That's of highest precedence. So I'll take the value of my degrees on Fahrenheit. Notice that I'm using the variable name, not the actual hard-coded amount. I'm going to subtract from that 32. With my parentheses, I know that this will be the first operation undertaken. Having done that, I know that my next two parts of this calculation are multiplication and then division, and they have equal precedence, equal strength, and so we'll go by the laws of associativity and work from left to right. And so we'll multiply the value that is generated when 32 is subtracted from the value of degrees Fahrenheit. I'll multiply it now. In mathematics, I can just put the number that I want to multiply by adjacent to what I want to multiply. But I can't do that with my compiler. I have to be very explicit. So we'll have that multiplication symbol. I then know that I want to divide by 9, and I'll simply do that. Now, if I did not include these parentheses, my calculation would be off because I would have had the multiplication, 5 would have been multiplied by the degrees Fahrenheit, 32 would have been, 5 would have been multiplied by the degrees Fahrenheit, 32 would have been multiplied by 9, and then those two resulting figures would have been subtracted one from the other, and I would have had an incorrect result. With my parentheses, I force my compiler to do this subtraction first, and then the laws of associativity and precedence have 5, multiply that value, divide by 9. And so I'm going to store that value into degrees C. Well, let's just make sure that this worked, and I'll do that with a system.out.println, and I'll just print out the value of the degrees on the Celsius scale. Now I know that with negative 40, I should have negative 40 returned back. I have a clean compile. Let's run. And I have negative 40. Life is good. Let's do one more test, and I'm going to put in 212. I know 212 in Fahrenheit is 100 in Celsius. So let me recompile that and then run it. And as I run that, I should get 100. I feel good. Well, I'm going to do a little more test data. Let me put in negative 41. If negative 40 in Fahrenheit is negative 40 in Celsius, negative 41 in Fahrenheit should be a little bit off. I've got to have a little bit of decimal value there. So it'll be negative 40 point something. So let me compile this and let me run it. And I get 40, which I don't expect. Well, let me do another little test then. Let me see what's the value in Fahrenheit negative 42. What's the corresponding value in Celsius? So let's compile that. And then let's run it. And I get 41. So negative 40 maps to negative 40. Negative 42 maps to negative 41. But negative 41 doesn't seem to map to anything. What's happened here is integer division. My degrees Fahrenheit and Celsius are both integers. With this part of my calculation, I have an int. I'm going to subtract from it another int. All's well and good. That returns back an int. I multiply that by another int. I have an int returned. All well and good. But then I'm dividing this int, 5 times degrees F minus 32, by another int. And what I have returned back is an int. Java will truncate off any decimal value. So the decimal value is truncated off, and then the whole number returned and put into degrees C. This is integer division. An int divided by an int always returns an int, and it does so by truncating off any decimal values. Now I have a number of ways to work around this. The easiest would be to make my degrees F a double. Making it a double will force this whole calculation to return back a double. So I've declared degrees F to be a double, and I'll compile, but I get yacked at. And I get yacked at because degrees C remains an int. This will return back a double because I've got a double minus an int times an int divided by an int. I'm going to get back a double. And I can't put a double into an int space. So let me declare degrees C to be of type double. I'll compile and run. And we see that my negative 42 now has this long decimal value. So what we've examined here is parentheses and precedence, and then the phenomenon of integer division. Integer division happens when I have an integer divided by an int always returns back an int, and it does so by truncating off any decimal value. When you're working with mathematical calculations, always be aware of integer division. Use parentheses, use precedence, be aware of the rules of associativity, and also of the phenomenon of integer division. Thank you very much.